Hello, hello. I cannot believe I am bothering y'all again. I'm so excited to be wearing this shirt. I wore this shirt a year ago. It says it's kind of fun to do the impossible. Yeah, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And it's from Disneyland. And I wore it when I went to Disney World last year. And I wanted to wear it for this video because it feels like the vibe of this video. The title is, of course, Women Are Having Babies in Their 40s or something tied to that. And as someone who has constantly talked about the desire to be a mom, anxieties about aging, and how those two things sort of mesh together in my life. When a friend sent me this article, meme, whatever, I was like, this is something I want to talk about on my channel. So even though after this video, I'm going to take a little break from posting here. I'll be back. I'm never going to not post in this space. But if you watched my last video, I am considering ways I can pivot as a creative. And I'm planning on starting two new channels. You'll know what they are. I'll let you know. They're going to be very different from this. And so I will always post here, but this channel will have this vibe and other places will have another vibe. And I need a break to solidify the vibes in the other spaces. So I won't be posting here for a little while, but I will be back. Anyway, before I take my break, I wanted to talk about this new information that's just come out about women and having babies in their 40s. I feel like this is very on theme for my channel, and there might be some people out there who watch my channel who are women who are in their 30s, their mid to late 30s, and they've convinced themselves that they've run out of time. I know when I first made my very first video about never having kids, I think it was called I'll Never Have Children, and That's Okay. I was a whole 36 years old, and I was 37. I was 37 years old, and I was convinced that I wouldn't have kids. I was right, but not everyone will be right. Not everyone will be too old at 37. I don't know. This is pretty big. So I want to talk about it. To me, it means that number one, women have probably been able to do this forever. We just have been expected to start having babies so much sooner that by the time we got to our 40s, in order to stop the process from happening and just be able to focus on our lives or maybe our older kids or whatever, we have invested in some kind of option for birth control. Now, I'm not saying that the 40s are a super fertile decade for every woman, because that's just not true. But if I think about it, to me, when you think about how pro-natalist society is, and by the way, pro-natalist just means a society that's super obsessed with women giving birth and having babies. That's kind of the way that the United States government is moving, right? Have more babies. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about that. But when you think about how pro-natalist not only our society is, but other societies around the world, some women start having babies extremely young. What is it? This is very disgusting, but I'm going to say it. If she can bleed, she can breed, right? That's what some people believe. So they marry people off super young, in their teens. If you think about people like from my grandmother's generation, she was born in 1920. She probably was old having her first at like 19. And then she continued to have babies until she was 35. And I remember thinking when I was a kid, and I've talked about this before, my mom was the last baby she had. And I remember thinking my grandmother was 175 when she had this baby. She was on her deathbed. She was so old when she had my mom. And then I found out she was 35 and I was like, oh, okay. I asked my aunt one year, I said, so clearly Granny was very fertile. It was very possible for her to have children. You know, maybe she might have had 8 more. I don't know. But what happened at 35? To me, it's still young. And my aunt goes, girl, she ran out of eggs. I wish that she was around and I could ask her, was it birth control? Was it, her relationship was a little bit rocky. Was it that? Had they decided to leave each other alone? Were there any losses? I would love to know. I feel like I don't have the full picture of my own family's fertility journey because some people aren't here. And I think if more people had access to those records, I think if more women from times where women were encouraged to have babies earlier, marry in your teens, etc., I think if they were more open about what their fertility journeys really were, I think we would find that, yeah, they probably still could have gotten pregnant in their 40s. Like, this is not new. But if you start having babies super young, by the time you get in your 40s, you're tired. Get that man off me. Get him out my bed. I'm sleeping by myself. What do I need to do to make sure I don't have, I'll take the grandbabies, but I don't want to do this anymore. So I really think what we're seeing here is not only, fewer teen pregnancies, but we're also seeing the result of women who were allowed to enjoy their youth. And so by the time they get to their 40s, they still can just use the fertility that these women who are able to do this always had access to. I think this means that obviously sex education works. One of the things I hate about having grown up in a super religious environment, living in a super conservative state, and in the situation that we're in right now where the government wants to, I keep bringing in the government. I try not to talk about them, but they're just, we have a lot of things that are being passed about the curriculum in schools. Make it super conservative, make it super Bible based. And I don't like that because, number one, everybody that goes to your schools, your public schools, is not a Christian. And number two, the Bible really isn't the best place to learn sexual education and to learn how your body works. It's very, if you have sex before marriage, you will die. You are sinning. You are, that's the way of the conservative. So what do we tell kids? Don't wait till you get married to have sex. Don't have sex before that. If you do, whatever. And also any conversations about sex. I grew up in a super conservative environment. So any conversations about sex are kind of frowned on. And what ends up happening is you have people who are very uneducated and they end up in situations where if somebody had maybe talked to them about their options, had been open about birth control, are you sexually active? Okay, great. Let's put you on something. Okay, you don't want to be on something? Okay, let's look at your options. I like the fact, and I think this proves that for a time, and I feel like it's when my generation was growing up. So yes, I grew up very conservative, but I feel like in our 20s and we were getting so much more information. For a time, we were allowed to talk openly about birth control, about sex, without fear of being struck down by lightning. And because of that education, people made different choices. Because that education is still going on places, you have teens that are making different choices. You have teens that are seeking abstinence, and not necessarily just for religious reasons, which I think sometimes can suppress natural desires. You might want to have sex, but God doesn't want it. So it's like forbidden fruit. So let's do it. But I think they're making choices for their emotional reasons. They're studying people. They're looking at, and they're saying, I don't necessarily want to share my body with anyone until it's the right time. And so for me, this also proves that we're talking about sex more openly. We're taking religion out of those conversations. So we're able to be more science-based about what can happen and what precautions you can take and what your options are. And people are making choices about what to do with their bodies in just a more informed way. I also think that this means that some of the social stigma around being an old parent or too old to be a mom is extremely outdated. Every day I get on the internet and I see people clown any woman who's over the age of 30. Now, recently TikTok had a trend where they were praising women in their 30s, and I was like, oh, this is cool. But next week they'll go back to clowning folks and calling people too old and saying, at your big age, I can't believe, whatever else they say. The internet is incredibly ageist. Men are very clear about once a woman turns 25, she's hit the wall. She's no longer attractive. She's no longer desired. She can't have babies anymore. Her fertility is gone. We gave them a little bit of knowledge about women's fertility and they took it and ran it into the ground. And I just feel like a lot of that stigma comes from people not being informed. It comes from one narrative being pushed, which was the narrative of 35 being a geriatric pregnancy and it being too late to have babies and you're dried up and you ran out of eggs. But that's not the only narrative. And now we know that. And now we know that other things are possible. And so news like this means that a lot of the feelings we have about being too old to be a mom and when you're too old and when it can no longer happen, you got to re-examine. You got to re-examine it. And now there's more evidence. Now there's a different story being told. I think that's very exciting. So here's what it doesn't mean, though. This is what it doesn't mean. okay? It doesn't mean that it's any less expensive to be having these babies in your 40s. So a lot of people, the reason why they don't have children young, the reason why they're not having families younger, whenever people scream and yell about millennials not having kids, a big issue is they ain't got no money. They don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. Well, what's going on? And for some people, and I really saw this with the conversations that happened around wealth after it looked like the stock market was going to crash and we're going to go into a recession, but it was really just a insider trading scheme. Y'all, maybe one day I do just need to rant about the government because anyway, when we thought everything was going to go kaput with the stocks, there were two very different conversations happening. There were groups of people of all age ranges, but particularly in around middle age. I've been saving for about 15, 20 years. And now my 401k looks like, what's going on? There were people older saying, I'm getting ready to retire. I don't have time for this. And then there were people, specifically people around middle age, around my age, saying, I actually didn't have any money. So it doesn't affect me. I found it really interesting because they want to talk all the time about how millennials are so broke. Millennials are so broke. They can't afford homes. They'll never retire. They have nothing. And it got put on Front Street that actually a lot of millennials do have some. They do have a nest egg. They do have retirement. They do have homes. They do have, some people got a lot. And in those people, in those camps, you will find people that are probably very ready to become parents if they're not parents already. And I think one of the things people were really sad about, with this election was I was ready finally to become a mom. And now look at the way the world is going. This is very scary. And I just want to say, if you're not in that camp, if you're not in that camp of super financially ready and prepared, it can be tougher, I think, to try and manage that and also manage pregnancy in the same decade. I feel like things should happen in shifts. And a lot of the people that I have seen who are excited about and talking about how, they're going to be pregnant, they're pregnant in their 40s, or they can still have babies in the 40s, women can still do it. They talk about how nice it is to be in a financially settled situation. But if you're not there and you're trying to chase pregnancy and that in the same decade, that can be very tough. So just because we've got this new news out, it doesn't change that there are still barriers to being able to do this. Specifically, if you're a woman who is in her 40s and you need IVF. Some people will be able to get pregnant naturally and it's fine, but some people will need fertility treatments. And fertility treatments aren't free unless you work at Starbucks. I think they do something for people, but for most people they will pay. And it is expensive. Just because this is happening, it doesn't mean that there aren't some of the same good old fashioned barriers that block certain people from being able to be parents, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, or your 40s. It also doesn't mean that your specific genetic possibilities are up for debate. So I read this information and I was very excited, but once again, all I saw was evidence that these women could probably have always done this in any other stage of life, in any other time of life. And women like this have probably always been giving birth during their 40s. If they've had the opportunity, the only thing that's changed is the thought process around it. And now more people are trying that could have probably always done it. And so yay for them, but it doesn't mean that everybody will be able to. I think we do need to respect the fact that there was a reason why a red flag was raised about fertility and people needing to freeze their eggs and have you consider fertility treatments and, start trying at a certain point, freeze your eggs by a certain point. There was a reason for that. And that was because of certifiable records of women struggling to have children for an extended amount of time. That was that study, that research is out there. And so just because we have this good news, we can't turn our back on people who have struggled and will struggle to get pregnant, not even just in their 40s. I find it really frustrating sometimes when people minimize infertility. They minimize why it happens to someone. They might minimize it with you because of your race. I don't know how many times I had people tell me, girl, we black, we can have babies. Actually, that is a stereotype that was placed on us to make us more attractive when we were sold as slaves. True. the Black maternal like gift, mystical gift and ability was something that we were strapped with as a marketing tactic. And it's very unfair to women who are of color, who are Black women, who struggle to have babies. When people say to them, well, we're Black, we're not supposed to be going through this. Who told you that? Where did we get that from? Because it's not accurate. And so I feel like just because we have this news, it's good news, it doesn't take away from the fact that there will still be people that struggle. Your specific genetic reality is your genetic reality. You can't, I mean, it is what it is. So I think that's something we should keep in mind. Also, it's not going to change the fact that having kids is a lot of work and a lot of responsibility. And it's a lot of work and a lot of responsibility all the way up until through adulthood. I was not raised as a person who, when I hit 18, I was on my own. And my parents were like, okay, that's it. Don't call us. I think they were actually a lot harder on me until around the pandemic. And after that, it was like, damn, we made it through a world, the end of the world. Girl, you need some help, but you won't. But even then, they were still very, you can come back and live with us if you need to. You can like very much looking out for you, checking in with you. I remember when I was living in LA, my mom was always trying to send like a care package or something. If you're I feel like it's different type of parents out there, and you have some parents who, once that kid even before they turn 18, you put a lot of responsibility on them, a lot of expectations. Go ahead on, do what you do, live your life. I'm just your mama. I ain't here to, I'm just your daddy. But then you have people, and this is the kind of parent I would want to be. I'd always want to be there so my kid could turn back and be like, yo, mom, I need help. I need support. I'm having this issue. I'm having this issue. I'd want to be able to be there to offer some. And I know a lot of parents like that in my life, whether I'm related to them, I've seen them work through the lives of my friends. And if you have a baby later in life, and this is something that I have thought about a lot, are you going to have the energy and the resources and funds to still turn around and help in your 50s and your 60s and the way you would have been able to if you were younger, and you started with them younger? Because to me, I think about it this way. I'm like, okay, let's say I had a baby at, what am I, 41 now? Let's say I had a baby at 43, 44. This is a different life. I've got a different body. It's a different reality. I'm 43, 44, and I have a child. And so they're in college when I'm in my mid 60s. So the age my parents are right now, my kids are just getting into college. What if they have some of the issues that I had when I was in college? Not knowing my major, being sick with a high fever in the middle of the night, wanting to transfer schools. What if they need me to come in, and I want to go into more detail, not just with my issues, but with issues that I knew from other people around that time, but I'm not going to. Let's just say I was very blessed. I had parents who were, and my friends were blessed, people that I knew. We had parents who were young. They were still working. They were in good health, and they could come help. I can only imagine, fast forward a few years, 10 more years, I'm in my 70s, and my baby calls me and they're like, hey, mom, I don't know what this is. Maybe they have a phone chip in their ear at this time. Hey, mom, I'm really struggling to make it out here. Can you float me like $300? I really need to pay some bills and I'm struggling, mama. Can you help me? And I respond back, hey, baby, I wish mama could help. I'm still working on my YouTube channel. This is my 10th YouTube channel. I'm so excited. Maybe this one will be the one, the video that goes viral. I'm doing a day in my life as a 75-year-old content creator. And baby, I don't know who's going to watch this. And I might have $300. Baby, I don't know. And then after this video, I got to go do my shift at the Musk Mart, the new Walmarts that Elon Musk designed before he stepped into his robot body. You remember that, baby? Hello? Oh, he hung up again. Hello, welcome to my channel. Okay, I don't know any 75-year-olds that talk like that. The people that I know actually that are all older are very spry and like they still have great memory. But I'm just saying, like, when I get to be that old, am I going to be able to be the kind of parent that still has the energy to respond to my kid and to help my kid? because that's the kind of parents that I had. Would I be able to do it? And then what happens if you get a child who is high needs, who needs a lot? Listen, when I got my dog Sebastian, and not that a dog is a baby. I don't want y'all thinking I'm saying that. Not that a dog is a baby. When I got my dog Sebastian, he was so in the head that the doctor, whenever we first went to his very first vet appointment, he heard another dog outside of the vet room, and the door was closed, and just hearing the other dog, knowing the other dog was out there. Sebastian was rescued off the street. He was found abandoned in a parking lot. Somebody gave him to me in a dog park. I took him in. Not only was he riddled with fleas and worms, so the baby had such bad worms. You could see his ribs. They were like eating the inside of his body. It was disgusting. But he had something had happened to him as a puppy, to where if he just heard another dog, the hairs would rise up on the back of his neck, and he would bare his teeth and just bark. I mean, it was almost foaming at the mouth, so angry at this other dog just for living. I was like, what is this? And the vet witnessed it, and her eyes just got really big, and she goes, you need to take him to a pet psychiatrist. It's my first visit with a vet. You need to take him to a pet psychiatrist, and you need to get him on some antipsychotics. My dog, get him on some medication, and we need to try and manage whatever this is. Whatever happened to him, he is struggling, and you're going to have to manage it. And so with time, with staying with me, with getting regular food, with being treated with play dates with dogs that he trusted, because it was something about not knowing what was on the other side of the door, taking him to doggy daycare. I explained what was going on, and they said, well, we'll watch him. And he did so well. It was very confusing. With time, he got better, but it has been a journey. And I remember before I even did any of that, put him in doggy daycare, any of those things, I tried him out with one dog, 2 dogs. Okay. Let's see if, we can take him on walks and expose. Let's see what I was trying to do my best. I had never run into this before. And I was asked all the time by people who knew I basically picked this thing up off the street. They were like, are you going to take him back? Are you going to give him back to, are you going to send him back to are you going to donate it? What you going to do? You can't keep this dog. This dog is crazy. And I thought to myself, take him back. It's my dog. Now, luckily, he is just a dog, so I don't have to worry about, okay, I'm trying to put him in school, and okay, well, that medication didn't work. I didn't end up putting him on medication. I ended up just kind of pacing it and just watching him over time, and a lot of people said, well, he'll change when he gets neutered. Mm-mm. And then they said when he turns 2, and it was really until he turned about 3 years old. That's when he really just chilled out. But it was a rough time. But my point is that he was a challenge. And there are so many parents every day that have kids who are challenges. And it's not necessarily anything you even did. But the child comes in and it's like, challenge, like that episode of The Cosby Show with the tap dancing. And you gotta do your best to figure out, how can I meet the needs of this child? I don't know that I would want to spend my later years in life doing that, because sometimes the needs especially if a child has really high needs, they don't stop needing you when they turn 30, when they turn 40. If I had a baby at 44, I would be in my 70s, in my 80s, still trying to check on my son, are they okay? What's going on? Will he call me? What's he doing? That's a lot. I told the Lord, I said, God, if you wanted me to have a baby, especially later in life, you got to send me a rocket. I mean, if they come through me, but they are not of me. They look back just to say, thanks, Mom, for the assist. And they're out to live their life. And I want to say this, a lot of times people's attitudes they have about childbirth, child rearing, whatever, comes from what they've seen and what they've experienced. So I'm not just trying to spook anyone. I'm not just trying to be like, this is stuff I've witnessed. I have witnessed grown ass adults stressing the hell out of their elderly parents. I have seen it. And it is not necessarily a life I would want to live. So just because, you got women out there, they're having babies in their 40s, whatever, I feel like having children later means that you're going to spend the part of your life where you might be a little weaker. You might not have all the resources. You might not have, I don't know, not all of the nerves. And you might spend that trying to raise a kid who's going to need you. Children need you. And it doesn't have a definitive time where it stops. And I just don't know if I want to deal with that, or if I think that that's the most fun thing to deal with when you get older. For some people, none of what I just said is going to matter. You're going to be able to give birth and you're going to have a wonderful time. And it just happened a little later in life, and that's fine. How freeing it must be if you felt like I was out of time, right? It wasn't going to happen for me, and then it happens. I can only imagine. I talked a little bit about how I wouldn't necessarily want to be a parent later in life, but something that I have realized about me, and I think it's important to include this here, is I have come to the decision that I don't want to be a parent at all. And this is crazy. I know. This is crazy for me, because I started this channel when I was around 36, 37. I can't remember how old I was. The age always switches. But I was around 36, 37, and I started this channel. And one of my first videos was talking about how sad I was that I wasn't going to be able to be a mom. I was so sad about it. And now I don't feel that way anymore. And about 2 years ago, I made a video where I was like, my solo fertility journey is over, but I don't think my mom journey is over. Like, I could still be a mom. I just don't want to do it alone. And I'm kind of letting go of the driver's seat. And now I've sort of climbed out of the car altogether. Just get me off this ride. No, thank you. And here's why. I don't know if that kind of fertility vibe runs in my family, and I'm not interested in poking and prodding myself to figure out if it does. I know that I know my mom struggled for a really long time to have kids. And I say struggled for a long time, but she was 19 when she got married, and she had her first baby at 27. And my whole life I was told how they didn't think it was going to happen for them, how the doctors told them that there was maybe something wrong with her and she was going to need to have these operations and it was going to be very tough and she was going to struggle it was a struggle. And then she went in and did some kind of a blue dye test. This is early 80s, She went in and did some kind of a test and she was able to conceive. And I have heard that story my whole life. I've heard how much I was wanted and how much they prayed and how much they didn't think it was going to happen for them. And I think that on top of my own journey, whether it was miscarriage, whether it was fibroids, whatever, I'm just like, I don't think I'm one of the fertile 40 ladies. I don't think that that's me. I don't think that that's my path in life. Also, finances. I've said it before, but at this point, I can really only afford dogs. I can't be the kind of parent that I would want to be. Now, I do think that I was so focused on being financially responsible for a really long time because I wanted to be a mom. In fact, I recorded a video talking about this and then I didn't end up posting it because I didn't like my tone, but I was talking about all of the opportunities that I was offered when I was in LA, and I turned them down because I knew if I take this path, it is unconventional and it is unstable, and I want to be a mom, and so I want to stay where stability is. So give me consistent paychecks, even though this person just said they worked a project for one day and made what I make in a whole month. Give me consistent paychecks, give me this great insurance, and give me a schedule to where if I have a baby, I'll be able to be there for my baby. That's what I wanted. And I think I was so hard on myself because I didn't think that I would find a partner who would be good to procreate with because of the type of men I would always meet. And so this is another reason why I don't think I'll be joining the Fertile 40 squad. And also I'm not really pressed to be a mom like that anymore. I feel like I escaped my fate when it comes to who I would have procreated with. I won't be one of the people that says, oh my gosh, I never met anybody to have kids with. That's not true. I met the same type of man 5 times. He always, this type of person is like when he was coming, I could recognize him. When he started talking to me, and it was in different shapes, different races, different whatever, but I knew what he wanted when he showed up. They always came in my life with a non-committal, I don't want a relationship. I want to be single. Okay. Even if we were together, I don't want to be with you. I want to be, okay. They never had no money, but they had this attachment to me. And it was always related to me having one of their babies. Whether they said, and I say one of their babies because some of them already had them, whether they said that out loud or whether I could just tell by their behavior, and it was like a need they had. I don't know. I don't want to get into it because it sounds strange, but I dodged this or said no to this several times. And I would sit back and I'd be like, Lord, can't you send me somebody who's slightly normal, who wants this from me, who wants to do this with me, please? And I feel like when I was at my best, and that's the time that you want to attract someone great, nobody would come. It would just be silent. But when something would happen in my life and I'd be like very depressed and down on myself, here would come one of these types slithering in on his belly like a snake, demanding things from me. And I wouldn't even bring up baby stuff. I wouldn't even talk about that. And that fool would bring it up every single time. And a lot of times it would take hell and high water to shake them. They would not go away. Even if, and it would be so crazy. Like, it seemed like you don't want nothing else. You just want me to do this. And I said no every single time. I either said no or I acted up so bad that they were like, never mind, I wouldn't want to do, good. Get away from me. But that being said, I was so hard on myself financially because I just knew the men that come in my life, they don't be worth a damn. So I wouldn't be able to procreate with a partner that was right for me. And when I stopped being so hard on myself about having to be the sole breadwinner, the sole provider of whatever future child. So I said, goodbye, classroom. I'm going to do this highly unpredictable, weird job of content creator now. I'm just going to focus on me. And if somebody comes in my life, then he's got to be, the one. Because nobody came. Nobody showed up. Or if someone did show up, he wanted to do the same stuff. He still ain't had no money. Like, it's just a crazy cycle. So it felt like if I want to participate in this, if I want to be a mom, this is how it's going to look for me. And I don't know if you can relate to that. It's very similar, I feel like, for me in a lot of situations in my life. Like, if I'm going to do this and it's going to work out, it looks like this. I don't know. I feel like that does not match with what a lot of life coaches and whatever would say these days, but that's what I've experienced. It's been so predictable that, like I said, when I meet this type of person, I'm like, I know what he gonna want. I know what he's gonna ask. Which brings me to another point. Recently, there was a woman on TikTok and she was like, I'm 56 and I'm pregnant. And woo, that comment section, people were like, well, I knew somebody that got pregnant with twins at 59. I knew, I'm telling you, I feel like women have always been able to get pregnant much longer than we've been taught. It's just you also have people that have not been able to be, and we've focused on that narrative. And maybe the percentage of people who can is lesser, but it's never been impossible the way we have all been taught. And you know what I mean. The way they have acted like at 35, you might as well donate your uterus to science. It's crazy. So anyway, you have all these people sharing these stories of, oh, my auntie was 59. The oldest somebody said was 70 and she used fertility drugs. I don't remember. But people started sharing their stories of getting pregnant later. And then people were in the comments and they were like, be careful out there, ladies. Be careful out there, because the woman who said that she was pregnant, she hadn't used fertility drugs. She hadn't used anything. She just gotten pregnant naturally. And so everybody in the comments, be careful out there, girls. You never know. Ooh. And I'm thinking, be careful of what? If I don't go out in the world, which I don't really go out now, and I recognize the kind of fools that try and run this game on me, and I don't open the door, which for me would be like online dating, then I ain't got to be careful. I don't have to. Honestly, I have really lived a life where I've never had. I think a lot of women who, if they get pregnant in their 40s, they have a committed partner. A lot of people have a committed partner by this age. It's not, I'm actually an anomaly because I don't. And a lot of people, even if they don't have a committed partner, they got somebody they hit up, a little friend here, a little friend there who take them out, a little friend they spend time with. I don't have none of that. And none of it is necessary for my life. And most of the time, the men who come into my life, I'm able to say, get back. Because you ain't got no money. You crazy. Something going on. How many baby mamas you got? What's happening? I'm not doing that for you. Goodbye. So for me, it's very highly unlikely, because it's like, well, who would I even do it with? So I don't know. I'm not in the group of people that's got to watch out. It can still happen to us. We don't know. I actually do know. It's cool. I'm marked safe from accidental pregnancy in my 40s. And then I want to say I have such a deep respect for women who are pregnant and what they really go through. I used to romanticize pregnancy. I used to romanticize it. I wanted the glow. I wanted the bump pictures. I wanted it all. And then I started listening to women who were pregnant. Not only did my mom have horrible pregnancies, toxemia, diabetes, gestational diabetes, high blood pressure, the baby kept trying to come early. It just shoved me in there. No, not yet. But other people that I've listened to, sciatic nerve issues, like I said, high blood pressure, preeclampsia, constipation. I did not know that pregnancy could cause constipation. Hemorrhoids. I'm going to tell you, after a lifetime of romanticizing what I would be like pregnant and how beautiful it would be and how full I would feel being blessed with the offspring of the man that I loved, the broke, crazy man that I most likely loved, I just started really looking around like, wait a minute, what's the reality here? And I was like, I don't think that is something that I want. I don't think that's something I need to experience. Some people say it's a beautiful experience. I loved it so much. But then some people are very honest about not liking being pregnant at all. They hate it. And you never know what side of that you're going to be on. So for me, I was like, well, sometimes rejection is protection. What if I would have had a rough ass pregnancy? You never know. Oh, you have to think positive. You have to think realistic. And you have to know that you're not guaranteed anything. It can literally go anyway. And there's nothing you can necessarily do before that can prevent it from being tough for you. I've seen people who are like, yeah, I was an athlete. I worked out every day. And then I got pregnant and I was so sick. There's a disease called hyperemesis guayvart. I'll put the name up here, where it's just like severe morning sickness. That morning sickness don't care if you were an athlete running 10Ks every day. It's some stuff that happens to you pregnant that you just can't prevent. I think people need to be more honest about that. You are growing another life inside of you. And for every woman who's like, oh, I would forget I was pregnant if I didn't look down. My life really didn't change. I did all the same things. That's why I encourage people to keep it positive. Sure. But there's so many people who have severe issues, and we need to just be inclusive and remember that. And if you're a person who's mourning maybe never having a baby, like I was for so long, I had to get real and I had to say, wait, what exactly what's going on? Hey, that might not be what I needed to experience. The best thing about me not necessarily wanting to have a baby anymore is there's a newly found freedom in being child free. When I initially would think about never having kids, I would just feel so sad. The word like barren would sit in my mind for the longest time, and I would feel so defeated and like I had really missed my purpose in life and I'd let myself down, and what was I even still here for? And I realized the motherhood lens caused me to look at myself as a mistake and as someone who was constantly living in lack. Look at what I failed to do as a woman. I'm a failure as a woman. Ouch. And because of that belief, I spent a very, very long time grieving, always so sad, always grieving. And now I'm like, if you remove that lens from your life and you look at it for what it really was, you're a woman who could have been miserable in a co-parenting situation with Beelzebub, okay, with Lucifer. You could have had a pregnancy story like your mom and had a really rough time, but you wouldn't have had the supportive partner of your dad. You would have had these monsters who came into your life. You would have never embraced your version of soft life. I prefer the pace of my life and the realities of my life here and now over any other era I've ever lived in. This is the best one. Okay? Just let's get that clear. And when I remove the fact that I never became a mom from my life, I see somebody who is able to take control of her realities in various ways without worrying necessarily about how it's going to affect a whole other human being's existence. I mean, sure, if I decide to go, or I'm able to go back to work full time, then, my dogs will have to stay in their kennels for longer. But I'm the kind of pet parent that would just pay for doggy daycare for the week. Send them to daycare. And doggy daycare is like $100, $120 a week compared to childcare. Damn, But yeah, I can still pivot and take risks with my life without letting somebody else completely down. Let me tell you something. When I was a kid, my dad wanted to do so many things. He wanted to open a business. He wanted to move to a different neighborhood. He wanted to move to Saudi Arabia. Okay? Because he was in engineering. And he would come to us and ask us, well, you guys, what do you think? And he'd come to the family with all these big dreams he had. And I would always be like, what about my friends? My 3 friends. Well, what about my friends? And then when I was in high school and he wanted to move to a different neighborhood, I was like, I won't be on the cheerleading team at that school. My life and my sense of consistency and my well-being were taken so seriously when I was a child that my father had to sacrifice a lot of his dreams and what he wanted to do. And I don't have to live that way. I can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to move here. I'm going to arrange the situation for my dogs and then I'm going to go. Yeah. Now, realities are different. Government. But I'm just saying, hypothetically, I can just pivot. I don't have to worry about if I take a hit financially. I don't have to say, okay, son, well, mama left from being a teacher to being a content creator. And now you can't play on the basketball team no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have to worry about that. I can sort of just ride through life, make my decisions, and they affect me. I take that hit. I don't have to see that hit reflected back in the eyes of my child. And that's a huge thing. And so the ability to continue to grow and to bloom independently is such a gift. Also, I was so mad at my body for not being able to reproduce with no issues. When they told me, 2 years ago now that actually, girl, your uterus looks like the ruins of the Titanic. You need surgery and you need it today if you ever want to be a mom. And I was like, and how much is that? No, thank you. And decided to, just kind of monitor my body and see on a case by case basis, but not run in and take care of things right away. Cause I wasn't going to do it by myself. And there was no pressing, reason to, unless I was planning to do it by myself. And that's when I was on my single mom by choice journey and then it stopped, etc. You guys know the story. But, I was so mad at my body for so long. I was like, you have lost all your value to me. What was the point? I was so mad. And in fact, when I would try and put myself on a dating app and I'd be swiping through, and every time I would see that a man said, wants a family, I would feel like throwing my phone into the river and just crying until my last day on earth. I just felt so worthless. And a few weeks ago, I went back on a dating app. I went back on a dating app and I was only on there for about 2 weeks. And I realized, number one, I actually don't want anybody in my life disturbing my peace. And number two, I am cleared of the guilt that comes with not being able to give someone a child easily. I was so hard on myself. Who's going to want a woman that needs this surgery and needs IVF and needs all these? I can't even get a man to give me flowers. Why would it? What? And now it's just like, take me or leave me. I actually don't need you either. Unless you're going to give me the experience that I want, that I deserve, that I've been waiting for when it comes to dating and being courted and being loved. I'm not going to be rushed through just so you can so you can get what you want, which has been really my story, my whole life romantically. I don't have to do this. So if I look on here and it says still wants a family, skip. Now, if it looks like you already have kids or you don't need children or whatever, we can talk. But I'm not going to feel worse about myself because you want to do this thing that I can no longer do. I don't need to do it. And if you love me, then you won't need me to do it. It'll be fine. I deserve to just enjoy love for what it is and not as a gateway for me to be a bearer and giver of life. And I think that's the biggest change in me, just loving my body again. I was blessed with a healthy, capable body that has allowed me to do so much. I hated myself and I don't anymore. And for me, nothing is worth going back to that place. And I feel like if I was to follow a fertility journey again, if I was to meet the right person and everybody else getting pregnant in their 40s, why not me? I might go back to that place. And I don't want to go back there. I like being here. I wanted to talk really quickly about why we do get upset with women so much and why it is such a touchy subject, talking about pregnancy and aging and women's choices to or to not have kids. And I wanted to talk about this in a separate video, but I'll talk about it here. There was a trend a couple weeks ago and women were posting to this Jacquees song. I don't know. Women were posting 29 with no kids, 35 with no kids, 30 with no kids. And in some of the posts, they'd be dancing around 33 with no kids, and the kid would come out and be like, Mama, what you doing? And they'd push them out of the frame. And then in one of the situations, the girl really was 29 with no kids. And she's a really funny creator. She does a lot of like cartoon cosplay. She'll remake these little dances. She's very animated and creative. And she got so cyberbullied by men for saying she was 29 with no kids. You can be dried up. Ain't nobody gonna want you. You think that that's a flex? That's why you're gonna die alone. And it seemed like people were so mad at her for just not having had kids yet at 29 and being okay with herself and her body in spite of that. And I was looking at that and I said, I wonder why that is. Why do we get so mad at women for their choices when it comes to having children? Whether it's to wait until they're in their 40s when they feel like they're ready, or if it's to not have them at all, or if they're just saying, hey, I'm 29 with no kids and I'm okay with it. Why do we get so mad? And I thought about it and I said, well, number one, we live in a pronatalist society, and that's just getting worse by the day. Number two, I think for religious reasons, you have a lot of people who are trained to believe that a woman's fertility is connected to her blessings from the Lord. If a woman is able to give birth, if she's fertile, she's blessed. God loves her. If not, she's got to drink some teas and eat some fermented yak from a tree. I don't know. She's got to say her prayers and march around in a circle. She'll do whatever she can to reconnect herself to the divine, because not being able to have children means basically that you are cursed. You are barren. You are forgotten by God. A lot of people believe that in very religious communities, and it doesn't matter which one. There is a connection to a woman's fertility and her blessings from whatever God you believe in. And so I think that is ingrained in us. Also, on an animal tip, humans are animals. I think naturally there's a biological compulsion to everything that we do. I was listening to the Higher Learning podcast with Van Lathan and Rachel. Oh, I always forget her name. Van and Rachel. And Van said,
makes a lot of sense. I just think about that because, I know so many ladies that are, particularly ladies that are putting so much pressure on themselves to have children. And it makes sense. But then at the same time, it's like, girl, live your life, man. You only got one of them things.
But that might be,
their thing.
I want kids. So it's not, I feel like I have to have kids because I'm a woman. It's something that I've always wanted for myself.
Your body tells you that you want to have kids because it's pro-evolutionary.
Does it?
Yeah, see, this is the things we don't talk about. In order for us, a lot of this stuff is societal, but a lot of this stuff is also just in us. In order for the species to continue, you have to feel like you want to have kids, and I have to feel like I want to have sex. So every time we talk about how horny men are and all of that stuff, what you're actually talking about is nature. And other species where they don't get nobody comes down on them for the fact that...
You mean like animals?
That the animals, nobody comes down on the animals for the fact that the guys run around having the sex and doing all of that stuff. For us, we've made families and vows, and we've honor each other and exalt each other and we have morals. So it's different, but...
So you're anti-monogamy?
I'm not I'm not anti-monogamy, but what I'm saying is the drive to be like, it's a thing, it's a part of nature. And we're not supposed to talk about that because it makes these men are disgusting. They think about, yeah, they are. It's a part of nature.
But it's part of nature. You're excusing it.
I do like that he broke it down that a man's reptile brain is to do what he can to engage women in the process of reproduction. And I think love, and I heard this once in a biology class, love is nature's way of buttering us up so that we want to participate in the continuation of the species. So there is a biological compulsion there. And so if a woman is like, yeah, I'm not doing that, it's like, who you don't get to opt out. Me, caveman, need to make baby. You know what I mean? Like there's a very animalistic, whatever, caveman mentality about it. And I also think, on maybe not so much of a religious tip, but on a more spiritual tip, we're all very aware of how powerful women are. And I feel like women throughout history have been oppressed and repressed because of that power. I think about the fact that you have some people out there who will say, if a woman should be able to walk around topless. Her boobs are the same as a man's pecs. What's the big deal? And when people say that, I'm like, girl, you know that ain't the case. Those breasts can feed. I remember my friend, when she started breastfeeding, she was like, did you know breast milk can change and you can develop antibodies and different things so that you can heal your children with your breast milk? Do you know that your body can basically turn to medicine if your babies are sick? And I was like, girl, how was I supposed to know that? That's crazy. Like our bodies can do that. Well, bodies can do that. The female body, that's insane. But I mean, it gives life. It sustains life. And the power. And men are very aware of that. And women are aware that people are aware of it. So when you have people that are dancing around that 29 with no kids, and I think there's an outrage of, do you know how powerful you are? Do you know what power you have? Why would you not respect that and not try and have as many kids as you want? And I think that's not a very rational way of thinking of things, but I think people do respond that way. They are in awe of the power. Those negative reactions, I think, are linked to the things I just brought up. Okay, I've been talking now for almost an hour, as I do. And like I said, this will be my last video until I come back in a little while. With some new things, and I'm very excited. So I want to close this out by saying that I am so excited about this news, and I hope that it becomes more mainstream. I hope more people with alternative pregnancy stories start talking about it. I did have a gynecologist tell me once that until I was like 44, I didn't really have anything to worry about. But I remember still thinking, oh, life is over at 34. And for me, I was kind of right, that the broids started taking over around 36. But there will be so many women. I had a friend who was 42 with one ovary, and her doctor told her, girl, you have the reproductive system of a woman in her 20s. If you wanted to have 3 more kids in your 40s, you could. She only had the one. And she said, no, I want to wait till I get married. She didn't end up getting married, so she just had the one, but he is amazing. He is a rocket. He's a rocket. And not that all children don't deserve to be loved where they're at, but he's the kind of child where as soon as he get out there in that working world and he's going to put, instead of her having to help him in his adulthood, he's the kind of kid that's going to be like, so I bought my mama a house. And I think if I was that person, I might have a little bit more faith in what I could produce, but I have not been that person. So in my mind and in my life, my parents were giants. They accomplished so much. And I was like, I have it. I know how to set up your iPhone. I wasn't, I don't know. So I'm very nervous about even the type of child I would have, but I don't have to worry about it. Anyway, there are so many women who will be able to give birth into their 40s and will be able to do it and do it beautifully. I feel like it's so important to have those conversations with your doctor, to examine your fertility through your own individual lens, and don't let the noise of what other people are experiencing or deciding affect you. Anyway, that is the end of this video. See you soon. As always, thank you for watching.